Top 5 practices keeping Airbnb investors broke and why you should fix them now. Okay, number 1, let's jump right into this. Number 1, I see short-term rental investors fail to diversify their short-term rental investment locations. This is a really big one. Now, we all know diversification is a good thing. So I can talk about diversification. We talk about it in the context of the stock market. And we all know that you're supposed to spread your risk around different areas to help minimize your risk, right? Well, one of the areas that I see short-term rental investors not thinking about sometimes, I deal with a lot of investors at STR Law Guys, and myself, I am also a short-term rental investor. And I see people going all in on one location without thinking about whether or not they should be diversified across their portfolio in other locations. If you rely too much on either a single property or a single location, you can end up in a pretty bad spot if you start seeing a downturn in that market. One example of this would be, I know a lot of investors that invest in the Smoky Mountains. And I love the Smoky Mountains, all over Tennessee, Gatlinburg, Sevierville, you name it. But I've had several investors come to me that have 10, 15 properties all close to each other in the Smoky Mountains. And what happens when we start seeing what some people call oversaturation? Or what if we start seeing average daily rates in those markets start to go down because there's continuing to be new construction that's filling out that area, or you just see an overall drop in demand for a particular market? This is happening in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. I see it happening in the Smokies. Well, where do you put yourself? Now you put yourself where your entire investment portfolio, your cash flow, everything is all stuck in a single market. And that just many times doesn't make sense. So it's always good to take a look at your portfolio, look to see if you need to rebalance, just like you would with in the stock market. If you were looking to want to diversify and sometimes you need to move assets into other areas, that's an area that I see people not being careful about. So another way to diversify is to have, let's say the example here in the Smokies, maybe you should have a mix of seasonal investments where maybe you've got certain properties that are in ski markets and others that are in beach markets. One of the things that you can do is have a mix of those properties where one helps to offset the other. You can run into cash flow problems, profitability issues, if all you have is a single property, or you have basically a portfolio of properties in a single area. Just like we mentioned earlier, a good way to rebalance is to make sure that they are mixed amongst seasonally high areas. So I see this happen a lot. Do not overinvest in one area, because if you do, you could end up getting hit. Now, another thing that you can do to diversify yourself is don't rely exclusively on Airbnb and VRBO as your basis of being able to attract guests. Look, we all know Airbnb changes their platform all the time. I've just heard horror stories all the time. People call me wanting to see if they can get legal help because they've been delisted by Airbnb, or they've run into problems because of some change in the way that Airbnb's algorithm works. One of the ways to diversify yourself is to have a strong marketing strategy and do some serious direct booking marketing. Set up a direct booking site. Make sure you're pushing people. One of the best things you can do is push previous guests from Airbnb. And if you're following the strategy I've talked about before, by making every one of your guests sign a short-term rental lease agreement, you can capture the email of every single person who comes in through Airbnb, and you can then remarket to them to push them as a future stay to a direct booking link. And as you do that, you can also cross-market. If you have a portfolio of properties, push them over on to your other properties. If you had a great stay at your beach property, introduce them through email marketing over to your ski property. So it's really important not to rely exclusively on just what Airbnb promotes you, because that platform could pull the rug out from underneath you. So I actually have some guests I have some actual clients that I work with that have as much as 50% of their bookings come from direct booking because they've really doubled down on the marketing piece. I myself will get anywhere between 20 to 25% of my bookings that will come from direct booking because I want to make sure and diversify my risk across those areas. So that's a solution. Final example. I give you an example of someone that I know. He has 30 ski in, ski out properties, right? Well, they're wonderful. During the winter, you can imagine they're killing it. I mean, he's doing really well, making a lot of money. But what happens when he gets into the shoulder season and the low season? He's running into serious problems related to cash flow, to profitability. So one of the things he did is he sat down and he did an audit of his portfolio. Look, All of us need to be auditing our portfolio. We need to make sure that it's where it should be. There are sometimes it makes sense to sell some of our properties. We need to redeploy those assets, move them in through a 1031 exchange, move them into a more diversified approach here. And that's exactly what he did. He sold 4 or 5 of those condos. He turned around and redeployed that money through a 1031 exchange and purchased some other properties in Florida that are on kind of an alternative seasonal strategy there. So that way he's able to mitigate his risk. He has seen much less volatility in his performance. And in fact, some of those properties are actually doing better. He was smart to sell some of his lower performing properties, move them over into a better performing area, not only market, but also property. Okay, so that's number 1, is failing to diversify your short-term rental investment locations. Number 2, failing to pay attention to market trends and pricing strategies. Now listen, this is really important. Are you aware of all the traffic drivers and all the special events that are coming in to the locations for each of your properties? If you're not aware of them and you're not keeping up with them, you're losing a tremendous amount of revenue. And so you really need to be paying attention to those things. I'm going to give you an example of what I did with one of my own properties in Texas. Well, listen, coming up in April, and if some of you have properties that are within this, you should take a look at them right now. Coming up in April of 2024, what you're going to find, there is an actual solar eclipse that's going to be coming. That's actually going to be a total solar eclipse right over the area of a number of my properties, but one of them especially. It's a large property that accommodates well over 20 people. And so I saw that this was coming and it was going to be right over my area a year in advance. So in April of 2023, I adjusted the pricing. I increased the pricing through the Price Labs tool 7x. Literally, I increased the pricing 7 times the normal pricing, and I allowed the dynamic pricing tool to slowly make those adjustments as we drew closer to the event. Well, guess what happened? I ended up getting a booking for $35,000 for a 5-night stay. That's 7 times what I might normally charge for a 5-night stay. But because I made sure and I was aware of what that traffic driver was, and these are multiple families, it was actually 3 families coming from different parts of the country that they wanted to come down. They're huge astronomy fans. They wanted to experience this. So what did they do? They are now coming down and they're going to stay at our property and pay $35,000 for 5-night stay at one of our properties. Well, what do you think I did for my other 2 properties? I made the same adjustments for them a year out, turned around, and they booked for over 4 to 5 times the normal rate. So I say this to say this: if you're not paying attention to make sure and understand what those traffic drivers are and special events, you are missing out on a tremendous opportunity for revenue. And some of you might be listening saying, I don't even know what he's talking about. What is he talking about, dynamic pricing? There are dynamic pricing tools out there like Price Labs or Wheelhouse that will actually give you the opportunity to be able to price your short-term rentals and supply and demand like hotels do. You want to make sure and maximize the opportunity for you to make the most money on every single stay. If you fail to use these tools, you're leaving a tremendous amount of money sitting on the table. So maximize your supply and demand. Check out these dynamic pricing tools and employ them. If you don't, they're costing you money. Mistake number 3, failing to focus on revenue management. In fact, this is a really up and coming area within the industry right now where there's special operators that are out there really helping investors focus on revenue management, getting the most juice from the squeeze, if you'd say. And the reason why this is really important is because at the end of the day in the STR industry, occupancy right now in this particular market that we're in the state of the industry, occupancy is the name of the game. So you want to be able to strike a balance between making sure you have the right occupancy rate and also making sure you have the right kind of guests. All of us need to have an idea of our customer avatar, who we really want to attract to our property. But at the same time, if someone's not staying in your property, you're not making any money. So you need to be daily checking your occupancy, checking not only your rankings, and there's ways that you can do that as well, being able to make sure that use like Rank Breeze and other strategies to help your ranking within the platforms. But it's really important. Occupancy is key. You could set those high rates. In the past, people would just do that, set to be the highest in the market, and you could end up sitting there with no one renting your property. So those between the week stays, say, Monday through Wednesday range, sometimes you have to make significant adjustments there, and then you can make up for that on the weekends. But failing to manage your revenue is going to keep you broke. Mistake number 4, poor property management will ruin everything. Now listen, I know this goes without saying. It seems like it's common sense, but most people out there in the short-term rental industry are paying either a property management company or a co-host to manage their property. The problem with it is I have to ask you this question. How much quality control are you placing on your property management company or your co-host? Now listen, if you choose to run your own, let's say you run your own properties on your own and self-manage them, which I do, and it's very doable, by the way. Don't think you can't do it. Then it's a lot easier to be able to maintain that quality control over everything you do. However, when you start to rely upon a property manager or a co-host, sometimes you can begin to distance yourself from the activity that's going on, and you'll start seeing a drop not only in your reviews and the quality of the perception of everything, but then the actual customer experience can begin to suffer as a result of this. I think we all know when it comes to short-term rentals, really, guest experience, the reviews, they are going to absolutely affect your profitability. They're going to affect your rankings on Airbnb and VRBO. So it's critical. This property management aspect needs to be audited. You need to know what your property manager is doing, what your co-host is doing. Because quite frankly, if you've got a bad property manager, I know some amazing co-hosts that do quite a bit better job than any property management company would do, and they charge you less. So there are solutions. Don't just assume that you're stuck with poor property management. In fact, I say that because in the property management world, common sense is very uncommon. You need to also audit your property manager. What all are they doing for you? Are they actually marketing your property? Let me give you a little bit of an example. One of the things I see good ownership doing, people that manage their own properties and co-hosting, one of the things they will do is if you've got a portfolio of properties, maybe in different locations, as you receive, and I think I mentioned this previously, but get the email address from each guest that you have, and they should be helping you with the process of doing Facebook ads, reaching out, making sure that your listing, you have the right copy on your listing, and making sure you're swapping out your photos as you move forward through the different seasons. So if you're looking to do bookings, my good friend Bill Faith, what he says, it's really important that the first day of summer booking season comes up when? On Christmas Day, December 25th. So you should be swapping out those photos and making sure they reflect that. A good property manager or a good co-host is going to be on top of that piece, and you're going to notice an uptick in your profits, your occupancy, and your good reviews. Finally, number 5, failing to over-deliver on the little things. Now, I know this sounds similar to my previous point, but I've stayed in so many Airbnbs over the last year, and what do I find all the time? I find broken toilets, I find broken games, broken ice machines, which is my pet peeve when it comes to that, and just not paying attention to the wear and tear on the unit itself. This makes a tremendous difference in the customer experience, and it can be the difference between receiving 5-star reviews or 3 or 4-star reviews. So you want to make sure you over-deliver on the little things. Imagine having an Airbnb with 25 people that are going to stay in this particular unit. You show up, you're going to be there for a 4-night stay, and what do you find? You find 2 rolls of toilet paper. You find 2 rolls of toilet paper. You find 1 roll of paper towels. Now, think about this for a second. 25 people, 4-night stay, 2 rolls of toilet paper, 1 roll of paper towels. How do you think that affected my experience on my stay in this property? Because this is a true story. I've had this happen multiple times. And what do I have to do? I now have to get in my car. I have to drive, go to a local store. I have to purchase what I expected to already be there. This is critical. That's a little thing that this property management company that I'm sure the owner had no idea of, they were failing to over-deliver on the little things, and it'll go a long way. Finally, when we talk about over-delivering on the little things, talk about communication. Prompt communication is probably one of the most biggest things that you could do. You know, in guest surveys, one of the things that we find is that customers generally, they are going to be influenced by what kind of review that they leave you based upon how prompt your communication is. So the more of the personal touch that you can provide, the quicker you are to respond, to show empathy, and to care about what's going on, that can really make up for any other type of issues that may arise. Because at the end of the day, people don't want to leave bad reviews for people they like. And so if they like you and they feel like there's empathy that's coming from you and you're addressing those concerns, that's going to make a huge difference. Is your property management company treating people that way? What about your co-host? And certainly if you choose to manage your own properties, make that a priority. Otherwise, this is a habit that will keep you broke. So look, I know I've covered 5 areas here. I could have covered many, many more, dozens more, but I wanted to cover a few of these areas because I see this coming up all the time. Think about this. If you don't fix these bad habits, they will continue to keep you broke. You'll have lower occupancy rate, lower profits, you'll have poor reviews, and overall, here's what happens. I see people fail to get this right at the beginning of their short-term rental investing journey, and overall, it'll begin to stigmatize their experience, and now they don't even want to get involved. They don't want to move forward with any other purchases. It will limit their ability to be able to create passive income, generational wealth through short-term rental investing because they failed to get it right at the very beginning. These are 5 habits that if you don't fix them, they'll keep you broke.